I want to tell you a story now, and it involves 4 of my heroes, 3 of whom are in the room today. And it involves the field of glioblastoma. We heard earlier this morning how deadly this cancer is. This is a cancer that uniformly kills every person who gets it within a period of about 18 months. So when a person is diagnosed, they undergo surgery, they undergo radiation therapy and chemotherapy. When you fail chemotherapy, your life expectancy is measured in single-digit weeks. So this is a story that began in 2001 when Daniel Case, Steve's brother, was 42, and he was diagnosed with glioblastoma. So Steve, Dan, and Jean banded together and said, together with Stacy, Dan's wife, we're not going to take this disease sitting down, we're going to fight. And they fought in a way which I think makes everyone in this room take a step back, because this is how we have to fight diseases. They formed a foundation the day Dan was diagnosed, or that week, to take on glioblastoma, not just for Dan, but for every patient with the disease. And the foundation went forward and started to make small advances in the treatment of glioblastoma. In fact, a clinical trial of which Dan was patient number 1 was actually one of the plenary talks at the big cancer meetings a year and a half later. Well, in the year 2004, the story goes, a doctor from Duke University, Henry Friedman, was in Dallas, Texas, giving a talk at a restaurant sponsored by a pharmaceutical company. So after the talk, a doc came up to him and said, you know, a patient of mine had glioblastoma, and they had failed all conventional therapy, and they had weeks to live, as is the case with this disease. And her husband, who worked in the garden department at Home Depot, had read in the New York Times that day that a doctor at Harvard had figured out a way to block angiogenesis, blood supply. And the drug was FDA approved for colon cancer, and had given one of the largest survival advantages we've seen in a clinical trial on colon cancer. And that doc, who was talking to the New York Times reporter, said it could work in other cancers. So I want that drug. So that doctor did what was right for the patient and gave the drug. Never been tried in glioblastoma, and the patient had a complete response. And again, this is a patient with 2 to 3 weeks to live. So that doctor went and told Henry Friedman there. Henry Friedman called Accelerate Brain Cancer Cure, the foundation, and said, can we put together a program to see if this is real? The MRI scan certainly looks real. And so initially, the company was contacted, and they said, listen, this molecule that blocks this, it's 150 kilodaltons. It's too big to even get across the blood-brain barrier. And if we actually took it into patients with brain cancer, there could be side effects that could affect our cells in other areas. Well, a lot of cajoling and pushing in that clinical trial happened. And so after 43 patients, and again with weeks to live, what they showed is about an 80% response rate in that initial clinical trial. And at a period of about 6 months, only 1 patient on that trial had progressed. So radically changing a disease. And so then the 4th hero in the story is Ann Barker, who you just heard speak, in that we met with Ann and talked to Ann and said, how do we get this drug from this small clinical trial actually FDA approved into patients? Because the problem is this drug is $100,000 a year. And so if you're a patient with glioblastoma and you heard this drug through the internet, through Twitter, through, probably wasn't around then, through some chat room, you want that drug. And it's a gun to your head if you don't have $100,000 to pay out of pocket, because until it's approved for this indication, third-party payers won't pay for it. So we figured out a way to do a clinical trial without a placebo group. We figured out a way to do a trial that was ethical for everyone in the trial. And so then what happened is that in 2008, the FDA approved this drug 13-0, and it's on the market. What's exciting about this is several-fold. The mechanism of action of this drug, it doesn't even get to the tumor. It lowers the concentration in the blood of a compound that we thought was just for blood vessels, but in the old days was called VPF, vascular permeability factor. It lowers the pressure of the cancer. This cancer requires high pressure to grow. You lower the pressure, that cancer stops growing, and you don't cure the patient, but you give them quality time without significant side effects with their family, which is what it's all about. The other amazing part about this is that the doctor spoke out in Texas. That doctor talked about how positive experience. Our healthcare system is so good at reporting the negative. Every time I have a side effect, I have to report it to the FDA and fill out all these forms. I never have to report the positive. And so one of the things we have to learn is we have to observe and keep our eyes open. This is a human field. Every experience counts. Every patient has to be on the stepping stone to help cure their own disease. Thank you.